Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner West,
Here.
Commissioner Brock,
Here.
Commissioner Ann Kelly absent.
All right. Thank you very much, Kelly. Will everyone please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, thank you very much, commissioners, and welcome to city staff and to the members of the audience. And for the audience this evening, this is the business from the floor portion, which means that you have an opportunity to address the commission with any thoughts or ideas you might have that are not on tonight's agenda. And we do have some speaker request cards if you would like to address the commission. Are there any interested parties? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to go ahead and close the floor to the public and proceed to approval of the minutes from a couple of meetings, actually. So the most recent meeting was the one on November 6th. And so if the commissioners would take a look at those minutes and see if they have any corrections they'd like to make to the November 6th meeting. Okay, not hearing any city staff, any corrections?
No changes.
Okay, so not hearing any corrections, therefore those minutes stand. But I'd also like to take a look at the minutes from the October 10th meeting. And if the commissioners could take a look at that and see if they have any corrections they'd like to make to those minutes. Commissioner Duell?
Yeah, something hopefully non-controversial to just add. Others wanted to ensure that policies currently found in the design guidelines are instead to be found in the general plan or in a historic district specific plan. Keep it general like that. There isn't a specific plan right now, but that was discussed, so I would like it to at least be reflected that it was discussed.
So staff's fine with that.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any concerns with that? Do we need to make a motion for that, or is that just fine? Okay. So I move to approve Commissioner Duell's additions to the minutes. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners before we vote on that? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Kelly, can you please call the roll to vote on those changes?
Commissioner Duell,
Yes.
Commissioner Acey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Ann Kelly absent.
All right, well, that motion carries. Thank you very much, Commissioner Duell, and city staff, no objection. All right, therefore, that takes care of our minutes from prior commission meetings. And the reason I'm sitting on this side of the dais this evening instead of in the center position is because I thought tonight, actually, December 4th is going to be our last commission meeting, but I did receive news that we will have a meeting on December 18th. But since okay, that's okay, so it works out perfectly.
I mean, that's past the time that I'm able to serve, because they're
Oh,
going to
that's
discuss
true.
appointments at the
That's
next
true.
city
Okay,
council.
so therefore, okay. I remember 2 years ago, for some reason, they did the appointments in January. I don't know why they keep changing that around, but for some reasons. So,
Don't make
therefore,
me stay.
since Candy Miller will be retiring from the Historic District Commission, which I'll talk a little bit about later during commissioner comments, I've asked her to chair tonight's meeting, and she graciously has accepted. And so therefore,
Give me the gavel.
watch out. So therefore, Candy, if you would please chair the meeting, I would appreciate that.
Perfect, thank you, Darren. Okay, first item of business tonight is PN 19-400, 705 Orange Grove Way garage demolition and determination that the project is exempt from CEQA.
Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you is for 705 Orange Grove Way for the garage demolition. The project is located at 705 Orange Grove Way between Sibley Street and Bidwell Street in the central subarea of the Historic District. The proposed garage is 375 square feet. The main house was built in 1948 and is not on the City of Folsom's Cultural Resources Inventory list. The garage was estimated to be constructed the mid-1970s and is also not on the City of Folsom's Cultural Resources Inventory list. The garage is a single-story structure with hardy board horizontal siding and does not contain any historical significant building materials. This is a view of the garage from the alley. This is one of the side views of the garage. And with that, staff recommends approval of the project as conditioned in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Go ahead.
I know we've previously discussed this when we've gone over demolition permits, but I thought since we are going through the zoning code update, it would be worth it just to ask, right? So the interplay has always been tricky, right, between the design and development guidelines, the section of the design and development guidelines that say the demolition should be more readily approved for structures which don't comply with the goals, policies, and regulations. I know that we lean on that, but it's tricky when that's in the design and development guidelines when the zoning code says that the commission has to consider factors like whether accommodations can be made to make it feasible for the owner to preserve the property, and to see, another factor that the owner of the property, to see whether the owner would be willing to sell it to somebody who would be willing to preserve it. That's tricky. I'm satisfied that we have enough with the design and development guidelines saying that demolition permits should be more readily given when it doesn't comply, right? It doesn't further the ends of historic preservation. But I hope when we're doing the update that we're able to deal with this and make it a little bit more straightforward, because with projects like this where I think I would at least expect that there's general consensus that it's not historically significant, it doesn't contribute to the goals and policies of the historic district. It would seem, peculiar that we would still be having to go through the analysis to see whether the applicant had sought to sell it to somebody who would be willing to preserve it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's something we can definitely analyze with the zoning code update.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners? I just had a couple. First of all, I'm assuming that when they take down the garage, they will still have adequate parking for that property? They're going to pave that area, or?
I think so. I also think that they're going to be building a second unit.
Well, and that's going to be my next question. If they decide just to build another garage, that would have to come to us for approval, correct?
That's correct.
If they put a granny flat on top of that new garage, then we will not be able to have input on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be considered as part of the granny unit.
So I finally understand this law. I don't agree with it, but I finally understand. Okay, those were my only questions. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to address the commission on this particular item, now is your time to come forward. You're welcome to come and address this if you would like. It's not necessary.
Just answer your question on parking.
Sure. I need you to come up here, sir, and say your name into the microphone so we can get you on tape.
I'm on mute. I don't want this to ring. Okay. I'm John Trott. I'm the owner of this residence. I've
Okay.
been there 15 years. And I've had extensive discussions with arborists, part of the city and privately. I have redwoods in the area. So the question with your, the parking is we're very careful. We're not putting any cement in, by the way. We're
Okay.
putting in DG, which is decomposed granite. It allows the water to go through, necessary to, get to the roots of the trees. I have one tree that's on my property. There's going to be some parking there, and then there's also going to be a parking for the tenant as well, and that's also going to be DG, so
Okay.
to preserve the trees in that
Yeah,
area.
just as long as you preserve the required number of
Yep.
parking.
And
Okay,
we'll have our arborists reviewing the whole process as we're
Perfect.
moving along the project as well.
perfect,
Yep.
thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And what is the desire of the commission? Someone willing to make a motion?
I'll move, okay. I'll move to approve the garage demolition PN 19400 located at 705 Orange Grove Way with the below findings A through G and the attached condition of approval conditions 1 through 4.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Duell,
Yes.
Commissioner Acey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Ann Kelly absent.
Okay, then next on our agenda tonight, and I feel it's very appropriate that this will be my last meeting and this item is here. PN 19-349, yes.
I am going to need to recuse myself. I'm
Okay.
on the board of directors for the Historical Society.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
I don't know that,
Of the applicant, so.
I understand, but okay, I won't question the attorney.
Thank you.
Okay, it's PN 19-349-917 Sutter Street, the Chan House restoration and addition and determination that the project is exempt from CEQA. Good evening again, Brianna.
I know, long time no see,
I know.
Commissioners.
Missed you.
The project before you is 917 Sutter Street for the restoration and addition of the Chan House. The project is located on Sutter Street between Decatur and Reading Street in the Sutter Street sub-area. The proposed project includes the restoration of the existing 981 square foot building to match the original historic design and also the addition of an ADA compliant restroom. The original house on 917 Sutter Street was built in 1910 and is listed on the City of Folsom's historical properties list and is proposed to be converted to a Chinese heritage museum. Here is the main building that is proposed to be remodeled. Here is the ADA compliant restroom that is required to be compliant per the building code. And here is the proposed trash enclosure. This is what the building currently looks like. And this is what is proposed. Appendix D, Section A1 of the Historic District Design Guidelines and Development Standards, the DDGs, explains that restoration is most appropriate when the building's design is appropriate for the area in which it's located. It further goes on to state that deteriorated features of existing buildings should be replaced with new materials to match the material building being replaced in composition, design, texture, and other visual qualities. The project conforms to the DDGs as the redwood lap siding, wood columns, trims, windows, and doors are proposed to be repaired, restored, and replaced to the original design of the building. The project includes a re-roof with 2 different roofing materials. The first is an asphalt shingle roofing right here on the east elevation. The second is a corrugated metal, which you can see up there. The DDGs state that both corrugated metal and asphalt shingles is an appropriate building material for roofs. A new foundation is also proposed as part of the building, and the restoration also includes the installation of gutters and downspouts, which are proposed to be copper. And copper is considered an appropriate building material per the building materials palette in the DDGs. As stated before, an ADA accessible bathroom is required to meet the building code requirements. The bathroom door will be painted in the same golden yellow as the rest of the building, and it will have some architectural paneling with the rest of the building to match, and it will have the ADA compliant signage found there.
Just a quick question. Is that attached to the house or is that a standalone right next to the house?
It's attached for the roof, but there's actually going to be like 4 inches separating
Okay,
it.
so there's no access to that bathroom from inside,
No, just from outside.
just from outside? Okay, thank you.
As stated before, a trash enclosure is proposed as part of the project. The DDGs say that trash enclosures shall be screened from view from adjacent properties, public street, and building entryways. They have also have to be constructed of substantial, durable materials that are compatible with the primary area. The project is proposing a 6-foot-tall concrete masonry enclosure that will match the primary building colors. It will be located behind the primary building in the rear yard area away from public view. There is an existing native oak trees on site that will need to be protected with the inclusionary fencing to prevent construction encroachment into the tree protection zone. Therefore, a tree permit may be necessary depending on the extent of grading, and this has been conditioned as condition number 7 in the staff report. We received 1 public comment letter as part of the project from the Heritage Preservation League, which they responded to the original plans that were submitted, but have since been revised. The comment letter included discussions about the trash enclosures, the restroom door, the roofing materials, lighting, and gutters, but the plans have been updated to reflect all the changes. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed project as it has been conditioned in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Brianna. Any questions for staff? I've got a couple, of course. the shed roof out front, is that going to be reworked as part of this project? And if so, what's the roofing material on that? I couldn't determine from the
Yeah.
pictures.
So everything in front, I think, is supposed to be the corrugated metal. The only one that's going to have the asphalt is from the east elevation.
Okay. That was my first question. Then, on conditions of approval, normally on projects in the historic district, we have a section that talks about discovery of cultural resources while you're doing grading for foundations and stuff. I don't see that as part of these conditions.
Is that something we can add? We can add that.
Yes, you will add that. It's kind of a standard. I was going to dig it out from past stuff, but I didn't have time. But there's a standard couple of segments that we usually include as part of these approvals, so, okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you, hon. Okay, this is a public hearing. I have no requests to speak. Did the applicant wish to? Of course, Jeff, I know you, I can't believe you didn't give me a card. Please identify yourself, please.
I am Jeff Ferrera Pro, President of the Folsom Historical Society. And I first want to say, Candy, I think it is very appropriate that you're chairing this. And I want to just honor you for the years of service you've given here and how much you've been a champion for the Historic District. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are intending to move forward with this, frankly, in stages. We're a nonprofit. We're focused on fundraising. And so right now, we believe we have enough funding to do the foundation and roof. We will continue having our committee meetings and planning for the details of the interior design. We don't expect that to have any substantial reason to ever want to change the exterior of the building. The building is a historic building. It's our mission to preserve it as a historic building. The one thing I wanted to bring up is that as we go through this planning, we're trying to create a museum that's going to be sustainable and interesting to the public. And in the process of doing that, we're trying to put together the business plan to make sure that this is going to be viable. If in that process we discover that there is something that is a minor change we'd like to make, we're wondering about how that would happen if there is a need to come back to another Historic District Commission review, or if this is something that could be reviewed at the staff level. And I believe, based on conversations that I'd had with Brianna, that we would be in a position to be able to have staff review of changes that are substantially compliant with the codes and with the intent of preserving the historic building. As an example, the copper gutters, that is an expensive material. And we may at some point come back and say, we really can't afford that and would like to change it to some other appropriate material that would be roughly compliant. I'm hoping there could be something that you could put into your conditions to say that as long as there is staff approval, that changes that are not substantially different from our intent to preserve the historic character could be staff approval rather than having to pay the additional fee for a new commission review. And so that's just request. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think that's kind of already understood at staff level. I'm not sure we need to condition that. If it can be decided by staff, it will be decided by staff.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, Jeff?
Yeah.
I mean, normally we only get items that are a substantial change to what we have approved. I don't know where your gutter scenario would fall, but
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up,
Yeah.
just to be cautious, because the additional application
oh, I
fee
know,
would be
yes, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And Chair Miller, to add to your comment, the condition of approval number 1 states that the project shall be substantially compliant with the submitted plans.
Okay.
And we're certainly willing to work with the applicant for minor changes and deal with those at a staff level, and we always have been.
Yeah, that's what I had thought, so,
Thank you all. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. so, Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, here, this is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the floor to any others who would like to speak on this project. Seeing no one else come forward, I am assuming that all HPL's concerns have been met. Thank you. Okay, all right, then I'll close the public hearing. And is there any further discussion from the commissioners?
Chair Miller, we have uncovered the language you were seeking.
Oh,
And
perfect.
would recommend a new condition, condition number 10 be added.
Okay,
And the city attorney is going to eloquently read this into the record.
because it's long.
It's still downloading, so I don't actually have it.
Well, I will talk slow because I do want to make this motion. So I will recommend approval of the restoration and remodel PN 19349 located at 917 Sutter Street with the below findings A through H and the attached conditions of approval, conditions 1 through 9, and new condition 10 to read. Dealing with the cultural resources during construction.
I think it would say something to the effect that if cultural resources are discovered during the
Right.
course of construction, construction will be halted.
I now have it. I think it's this one. So if any archaeological, cultural, or historical resources or artifacts or other features are discovered during the course of construction anywhere on the project site, work shall be suspended in that location until a qualified professional archaeologist assesses the significance of the discovery and provides consultation with the Folsom Historical Society, city staff, and the Heritage Preservation League. Appropriate mitigation as recommended by the archaeologist and the Historical Society representative shall be implemented. If agreement cannot be met, the Historic District Commission shall determine the appropriate implementation method.
Thank you. That was the one. Okay, well, that is my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Acey?
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner West?
Yes.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Dual recused, and Commissioner Ann Kelly absent.
Okay, thank you. We're making progress. Okay, that's it for our agenda for tonight. Is there any comments from staff?
Since we are in the holiday spirit, we will have a meeting on December 18th.
Okay,
And I think Brianna will have one item at least for that particular meeting. And other than that, we also plan on having you back at a future date to acknowledge your service and contribution to the Historic District Committee, Historic District Commission, and City of Folsom.
Thank you.
So we're not going to let you off the hook. We do want you to come back.
oh, well, I will be back. I will be sitting out there, but I will be back, so.
But until then, we thank you for all you've done for the city. and
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I second that.
Any commissioner comments before we adjourn?
Well, I did, oh, sorry, Barry, please.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to remind everybody about the Historic Folsom Home Tour this Friday and Saturday. Get your tickets at the museum and come by and see me.
Yep, rain or shine, we're going
Rain or shine.
to be there.
There's also a tree lighting this Friday from 6 to 9 p.m. in the Historic District. And the Antique and Craft Fair on Sunday
Sunday.
from
Yeah,
9 to 4-ish.
so lots of stuff happening in the historic district this weekend along with rain. So bring your boots and umbrellas.
Yep.
So,
Well, I had a few words that I wanted to say about Commissioner Kingdom Miller. I'm actually going to stall a little bit and try to buy some time because I'm waiting for my wife to return because we have something for you. So I'm going to talk slowly. But I did want to tell you, Candy, it has been an honor to serve on the commission with you for the past 12 years. And I remember when I first became a commissioner,
I had a great interest in protecting and preserving the district, but I didn't have the experience that you had. And for the past 12 years, you've taught me a lot. And I'm going to do my best to try to play a part in filling that void, since you won't be serving since you were stepping back a little bit. And I'm always glad to receive any advice or criticism that you might have
Absolutely.
for me. I expect it. I'd be disappointed if I don't receive that. And of course, there will be a commendation. And so I certainly personally want to thank you for all of your time, contribution since, I guess, 1988, really, when you started serving on the commission.
It's been 26 years I've been reviewing projects,
And
waiting for my paycheck, but
and I think we're involved in the development of the HPL with Loretta, in Loretta's family room, I think is what Loretta had told me. And you've just contributed so much to the city of Folsom and to the district. And we all thank you. And I was hoping my wife would be here right now to have a little more impact, but
it's okay.
But we'll catch up with you.
It's okay. Thank you, Darren. It's been my honor to serve, but it's time to let somebody else have this chair, so. But
Candy-
like I say, I will still be out in that audience, and I take great pride in now knowing I can say what I really think, so.
Candy, I would like to also say thank you. When the opportunity came to serve on the Historic District Commission as a business owner in the historic area, I am very intrigued by historical and preserving historical things and keeping things as much as we can to keep that quaint and charming historic district looking historic. And after talking with you and meeting with you, it was very encouraging and inspiring to be an advocate of preservation of historical things. And so thank you for just some of the history that you've shared with me that has made me, I think, maybe a better commissioner to preserve things. So thank you, Candy.
Oh, thank you. So can we adjourn this meeting now, please? Meeting adjourned.
We'll just give it another minute or two as they check the doors. I haven't heard from him.
Were the doors giving you trouble when you were here?
The back ones are locked.
But the front one was?
I didn't check those front. But I think Scott just went to go check that. Mhm. Always good to check.
I won't need it.
She's got a whole jar of them if you want. Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call to order the Planning Commission for December 4th, 2019. Kelly, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Commissioner West,
Here.
Commissioner Dool,
Here.
Commissioner Leary,
Here.
Commissioner Lane,
Here.
Commissioner Rathel,
Here.
Commissioner Mallory absent.
If you'll all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now's the time in the agenda where we welcome citizens to come up and address the Planning Commission on any unagendized items. If anybody would like to address the commission this evening, something not on the agenda, if you go ahead and come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes of November 20th, 2019. Those were included in the packet. Commissioners, do you have any modifications? Staff?
None from staff.
Okay, the minutes of November 20th, 2019 will stand as approved. We're going to go ahead and move on to agenda item number 1 this evening. It's a presentation on the Subdivision Map Act.
Can I cut in here and ask real quick, is this meeting open to the public? Okay, every single door was locked. Every single door was locked. If that's not a legal violation, I don't know what it is. What is? Every single door was locked. The front, the back, all locked.
There was one open door, because a few of us managed to find it.
Front door,
Just a correction.
locked.
And that was obviously a mistake. We had city staff go and check the doors. I believe they're set to automatically lock on most nights, but we'll look into it. I apologize.
It's happened to me about 3 times in 8 years. So. Does happen.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the item number 1. Dan?
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Daniel Wolf. I'm here to present to you a brief overview of the Subdivision Map Act. Okay, so Subdivision Map Act was enacted in 1893, and that time it was just 1 page. It was real simple. You do your meets and bounds, your monuments, and you turn it into the county recorder, and boom, stamp it. You have real property there, right? As Steve Cron said, those were the good old days. Things have changed since then quite a bit. The most major legislation was in 1974 when the Subdivision Map Act was recodified to require planning to be a key emphasis of the process. It was important because there was a lot of stuff happening at that time. The EPA was created, the Clean Water Act, so we wanted to have more government oversight on the environmental impact of the map process. So therefore, they made sure that the planning became a key emphasis of that process. Here's the pyramid of truth here. You have the legislative acts and the adjudicatory acts. Essentially, everything revolves around the top of the pyramid, right? We have the general plan. That speaks to what the direction we want the city to go, how much development and so forth. These are plans that were created by the city, right, by the elected officials, legislative acts. What you have below that, the adjudicatory zoning and map acts, these are essentially, it's a process. Okay, this is something that's, not so much how we feel about something, but following a legal process to get things done. So, purpose of the MAC Act since 1974 was to regulate and control the design of improvements of subdivisions. So for the seller, it's real easy. They want to chop up the land, they want to sell it, they want to make money. That's their purpose. Our purpose is really to regulate that, control the design of improvements, and most importantly, protect public health and safety. That's what we do together as staff and the legislative body. This is the table of contents for the MAP Act. I put this up here because I wanted to state how it's a long read now from the first time it was enacted with 1 page. It's quite long now, and it's a living document. It changes all the time. You see they snuck in here, chapter 4.5 right there. It's amended as needed. An example of that would be during the recession, all tentative maps got extended for a period of time to get through that, so developers did not have to go through that process when the economy got better. So the MAP Act says that the regulation, control of design, and improvements of subdivisions are vested in the legislative body of local agencies. Well, that is true. So the procedures of processing, approving, and modifying maps are in the Folsom Municipal Code. And we follow the code and how the map process goes through our city. Just to be clear, we have two things here. We have a parcel map and a subdivision map. Subdivision map, Steve and I were kind of talking about this earlier, is a final map. But at the same time, we've called both maps a final map, and technically both of them are subdivision maps. So for the purpose here, we're going to say parcel maps and subdivision maps. Parcel maps being 4 or less, parcel maps being 4 or less, subdivision being 5 or more. What's also important is where the Subdivision Map Act doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to land that's not divided, such as apartments, any type of offices, and especially mobile home parks and trailers, and it has nothing to do with lot line adjustments or mergers. So, key provisions here. Approval of a tentative map gives the owner an entitlement to develop the property, but subsequent entitlement actions may be required. So it depends on the intent of the development, whether or not we're just going to have a map by itself, or if there's going to be a design review or conditional use permit. Those things may apply depending on what the intent of the use of the land is. Two things, the difference between a vesting tentative map, and just a regular tentative map is that a vesting map, and it has to be labeled very clearly on the front, is that it is vested in which the time it is approved, meaning that when it's approved, it has to adhere to the general plan, the specific plan, the city standards at that time. Any changes after that fact, they don't have to adhere to. So the initial life of any tentative map is typically 2 years. A tentative map can be extended for various reasons. A parcel map can be extended by the Planning Commission for up to 6 additional years, while a tentative subdivision map can be extended for up to 6 years by Planning Commission and City Council approval. There's other things that can increase the length of a tentative map if there's a moratorium or there's pending legal action, but it's typically, let's just say, 2 years. Now, when a map is expired, no matter what happens, it's done, it's dead. They have to go through the process from the very start. So therefore, they need to make sure that they get their extension in on time or get whatever they need to get done to the city engineer, or else they got to start the process from scratch. The tentative map process for both the parcel and the subdivision map are pretty much the same thing. Staff reviews the application. We do a CEQA determination. Hopefully, it's a negative declaration that saves everybody time and money. And then we do a staff level review and determination that we present to you. That staff level review makes sure that we cover all the important items and facts about what the development is, what the intent is. Make sure we go over all the environmental impacts and so forth. That includes all the studies, noise studies sometimes, traffic studies, and from there we generate conditions. Now in the public hearing process, we bring it to you and hopefully it's complete. And then from there, we present to you the project and what we think the conditions should be. They can be modified. In fact, you can even add a condition, but we need to make sure that when we add or modify a condition, there's a nexus to it. We can't just add conditions like, it's holiday time, let's have them put the, Christmas lights on Sutter Street. There's no nexus for that. We need to be careful and make sure that when we apply or modify a condition, that it is connected to the project. So for the tentative subdivision maps, the only difference here, other than Planning Commission approval for the tentative parcel maps, is that we present it to you, and then you make a recommendation to council. And at that point, if you approve it, we go through that process again and present it to the city council. Any questions so far?
I've got one.
Sure, go ahead.
So I was going to ask you later, but as far as the mosque on Sibley Street in Limby, is that dead or not?
To my recollection is yes, the Planning Commission has extended it a number of times, and I believe it is.
Those entitlements have expired, yes.
Okay,
So
so
they would have
that
to
land
start the
would be up for
process.
sale again to
Yes.
somebody else. Got
Well, it
it.
can always be up for sale, but yes, its entitlement is dead.
Okay.
You had one comment in there also that it doesn't apply to stores or offices.
Yes.
But it does apply to commercial projects. So can you explain maybe a little more about what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. So when there is, so you can have commercial condos, but when it is just one plot of land, such as apartments, the MAP Act doesn't apply because it doesn't have, there's no subdivision within it. But yes, commercial properties can be subdivided, Sheba Office Park and so forth, and it can be phased as well. So it can apply if it is subdivided.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Sure.
Earlier, you had said that the parcel maps have nothing to do with merger and.
The MAP Act does not govern lot mergers and lot line adjustments.
Right, but at least in the sense that it's creating parcels, it's similar in that they're
Right.
both dealing with changing the.
But those acts alone aren't covered under the Subdivision Map Act.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I'm curious about who appraises the parcels.
Who appraises
For-
the parcels?
Yeah, for, say, property tax purposes.
An appraiser. I don't know about
is
too
that the
much about that
city's-
detail on the private side of things.
That's not the city's, the city doesn't work with an appraiser.
It's the
That's
county tax assessor.
the county tax
collector
assessor.
assigns it, correct.
Gotcha.
And they'll distribute new taxes when a map records and assign those values to those new lots when the map records. 'Cause
Gotcha, okay.
the map records with the county recorder, but it goes through the tax collector at the same time and the assessor to assess and collect taxes.
When those parcels subdivide, are they reassessed, or do they essentially take on proportional square foot value based on the initial assessment?
I believe they can be reassessed when the entitlements are approved, but when the map actually records, those taxes are distributed not necessarily proportionately, but based on the value of those estimated value of the lots, then ultimately the value of the improvements on those lots when it's ultimate for your final tax bill. So there's two rounds really of taxing. One is when the map records, and then eventually when you sell the lot and there's a house on it, it gets reassessed at that time with a new bill, goes to a new owner.
Thank you.
Okay, so what happens after the city approves a parcel map or a subdivision map? So following the map has two-year life to it. Subsequent entitlements could apply, again, depending on the development, the intent of the use of the land. And then we typically go into construction, and that's the city plan check and inspection process. Throughout this process, we need to make sure that the conditions of approval are met. Some of them have different timings, so it could be ongoing. I want to put that up there because ongoing means that even after the map is recorded, we need to make sure that all the conditions applied are being met to our satisfaction. The way that we make sure that these improvements are going to get done in a fashion which that they're intended to, if we're going to record a map before they're done, was a deferred improvement agreement. So if public improvements haven't been complete prior to the approval of a final map, we can enter into an improvement agreement to where we say, hey, you have to complete these within X amount of times. And to secure that, we use bonds for any remaining improvements that need to be done. Now, in a perfect world, we would have them do all the improvements before we record the map, and we can do that. But the developers, they want to divide the land up as soon as possible. They want to get that map recorded as soon as possible so they can start selling those lots even before they're built. So we have to go into deferred improvement agreement and make sure that we have bonds on this stuff, because once it's recorded, it's done. There's no going back. So when all this is happening, the developer will submit the final map or the parcel map, and of course staff will check it for technical accuracy. A number of other things through title have to happen, verification, tax clearance, all this kind of things. And then the difference here for a subdivision and parcel map is that for a parcel map, it's administrative approval. And basically, if it conforms to the tentative map and all the conditions are met, Steve Cron will approve the map and send it to the county recorder to be recorded. During this process, we have to make sure that everything is met. Even though parcel map doesn't go to the Planning Commission for review, Steve Cron would be on the hook to make sure everything is complete. The difference here, the parcel and subdivision map, is that this map, the subdivision map, is presented to City Council for approval. Okay, and it's the same thing. We need to make sure, present to the City Council that all the conditions are met. Each and every one of them, we'll make sure the map is correct, and that's presented typically in 100% completeness. Now, the City Council shall not deny approval of the subdivision map for the purpose of subdividing if the map substantially conforms to the tentative map and all the conditions are met. The City Council shall not approve a final map, or subdivision map in this case, if the map doesn't conform or if any one of the conditions are not met. Now, the staff will not present a map to City Council that is not ready to go. That would never happen. So they would need to make sure, and we would have to check to make sure that when it was brought to City Council, it was 100% ready to go. All conditions are met. All the bonds and agreements are in place.
Got a quick question for you about the deferred improvement agreement. My understanding was in the recession, this did cause a little bit of an issue, as we had a number, I'm not sure if the city of Folsom, but I know a number of municipalities struggled because all of a sudden these security bonds were not actually available.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of improvements that just didn't happen that were promised.
The city did get caught in that situation during the recession, and there are a number that I could think of off the top of my head before I even worked here that went belly up during this process. And the city did try to, really the city's not in the business of selling parcels. So what the city has to do is secure those parcels. That means literally to secure them with fencing, making sure that there's no runoff, and that was a huge cost to the city. So some of the means to recoup some of that from the bonds was to pay for that expense that the city took on with some of these subdivisions that went belly up right in the middle of construction. And yes, it was a tough situation for the city.
I can give you a little more history on the process because I was here at the time. And we had 4 or 5 subdivisions that were in the middle of construction. They had bonds in place, and what you're referring to is the deferred improvement agreement or a subdivision agreement that has bonding attached to it to secure and guarantee construction of the required improvements for that map. Well, in those cases, all of them were in default and had basically gave up the property in foreclosure. Some properties were taken over by the bank. Some were bought at a lower price by other developers. But in each one of those bonds that were in place, we were never able to acquire any funding from any of those bonds and none of those sureties. Because what would happen is we'd file a claim with the surety company, and a surety company would come out and take a log and look at the improvements or come up with an estimate, and then they'd come back and say, well, we're going to assign this to the new owner, either the bank or some other new owner, and it's just the cycle repeats itself. So we never did collect one dime from any of those sureties during that process. But since that time, other developers have stepped in, finished the improvements, and moved on. But the lesson to be learned there is that the bonds are very difficult to collect on, and we would always encourage them to construct the improvements in advance before the map. In that case, they can sell the lots quicker and build homes on them, and that's the ultimate goal.
So we still follow the same process, though. Everything that happened, municipalities haven't changed the way they do it because of this issue. They've just said, well, we know that risk is there, and it will sort itself out one day.
Correct, yeah. We still follow the same process.
How we deal with it now is that we do not issue building permits necessarily on any of those subdivisions unless the improvements are substantially complete, which means during the wintertime that the roads are paved, the streets are in, and it's in a safe manner. So we wouldn't allow any permits to be issued, so no resident in those subdivisions that are in default would be affected, adversely impacted by incompleteness of the improvements.
And when we do phasing for a larger subdivision, you know, by the time you pull the 350th building permit or whatever, do we actually bond for those improvements also? Or is that separate? It's just we stop issuing building permits at that point until that next improvement is made? Is there
No,
bonds?
the bonds are per subdivision, so that would be for everything within that subdivision, not particularly the house itself, but the public improvements associated with it.
What I'm saying is like if there's an intersection that has to be redone based on the capacity of the neighborhood, right? So we say, hey, this is going to be at the 350th house. Is that something that's included in the bond, or is that just something that's handled by the idea of we have a stopgap there?
It would be included in the bond.
It would,
And it would
okay.
have to be in place before they could have another permit. If they needed to do an oversizing or an upsize of a downstream pipe, if there's no capacity in that pipe, we're not going to issue permits and most likely not going to allow the map to record in that situation without those assurances in place. And at least, if not, if it was to go in default, they wouldn't get a building permit because that improvement would have to be complete before they could get a building permit.
A good example of that would be the Phase 2 water line for south of 50, the number of houses they can have out there before the secondary water supply is made. That's why they're getting to move on it now, because when they get to that final number, we will not issue any permits until that's complete.
Go ahead.
Just on the parcel map, since it's administrative approval, if anybody feels like there was an error or somebody feels wronged, like a neighbor, is there any appeal authority for anybody, or is that just done?
There is an appeal process for tentative parcel maps.
Okay.
So within 10 days of the action, appeal can be filed, and that would.
With the council or the commission?
It would be appealed up to the city council.
City council, okay, thank you.
That would be in a tentative map situation. The parcel map itself for recording, there is no appeal process I'm aware of for recording the map, provided it is in compliance with the tentative map and the conditions are satisfied.
Okay, got it, thanks.
When the map is recorded, it's considered constructive notification, right? Which just means that it is what it is, and yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For Steve. So Steve, you mentioned there were 5 different subdivisions that were in trouble. Could you name me just one?
The Knolls?
Natoma Valley, which is now the Knolls, that D.R. Horton purchased later on in the process. It was originally purchased in default in foreclosure by Ethan Conrad Properties. They did some improvements. We worked out and negotiated with them to do some frontage improvements in the meantime to coincide with the widening of East Natoma Street at the time. They cooperated with us and did those frontage improvements. Ultimately, they sold the property to D.R. Horton, who bought the property from Ethan Conrad and developed the homes out there and completed the improvements accordingly. There was one, I believe, I'm forgetting the name, but it's the one on Lakeside Way. Tentative map out there, 35 lots. I forgot the name of it. That one wasn't in default, but this one is off of Lakeside Way over by the
Stasio Estates?
Stasio Estates, that's what it was. And Levy Road Estates on Levy Road. That was another one that was in default. And that was an interesting history there. It was purchased by several investors,
Right.
if you recall.
I kind of know the history.
A lot of senior citizens that had purchased it and for investment purposes, and they ended up ultimately with the property in the long term. But they had to jump through a lot of hoops to try to get some value out of that development.
Right. That was kind of a bad situation for us on the Planning Commission as well, because we had to approve all those tiny lots and smashed in there.
If you recall, we had to go back and change the conditions of approval at a later at a later time because it was required to have 2 years, first 2 years of owner occupancy on any of the permits out there. And so we relieved that responsibility, changed that condition so that the investors, the senior citizens who own those lots could sell them and rent them to recover some of their value.
Well, thank you for that.
Well, the last thing about this process I want to state is if the city council wants to disapprove a subdivision map, then it needs to include finding which detail the conditions or requirements that weren't met. So we can't just, as a city, deny a subdivision map because we don't like it at that time. We have to have findings. There needs to be legitimate reasons why.
Can you give an example of what those might be?
Well, technically, it would have to be basically a failure to follow the conditions of approval. All the other technical accuracy of the maps and such is taken care of by city engineering staff. So we need to make sure that all the conditions that should be in there, can be allowed to be in there, are taken care of in the tentative map process. So when they go to final acceptance of the subdivision map, those conditions are what they are, and however they got in there, they need to be completed. And if they're not, if it comes to this point, like I said, the city staff is going to present to the city council something that is 100% ready to go. The only way that it would not be approved is if somehow, some way during that public hearing, we found that one of these conditions was not being met.
And can the applicant request a change in the conditions of approval?
Not at that time, no.
Okay.
And if they wanted to change the condition of approval, they'd have to come back to the legislative body to do that.
So would they come back to planning, or do they have to?
Parcel
go
map
through
would come back to
administrative?
planning, tentative, a subdivision map would come back to the planning commission and city council.
Okay, thank you.
The handout that's always provided in the packet that provides the findings that have to be found for each entitlement. I was looking through it to try to see beyond just consistency with the general plan and zoning. And it had language about recommending denial if it makes any of the following findings. And they're, in addition to inconsistency, physical suitability for the type of development, physical suitability for the proposed density, likelihood to cause substantial environmental damage, wildlife and fish. Is that from the government code or?
That's actually in the Folsom Municipal Code. Because that goes back to what the MAP Act says, is that the local agency is to control that process. So therefore, we have Folsom Municipal Code for that.
So, those are the findings that we're supposed to consider when we're considering a tentative parcel map.
Yes.
Those are the things we're supposed to be thinking about. If the opinion changed with the final vesting map for a subdivision map, could the council, deny a vesting subdivision map if they found that any one of these findings were not met?
If they found that the findings were not met, but if opinion changed, then no.
Well,
So, I mean,
an opinion
or
as
fact,
to whether
right?
it, well, an opinion as to the fact, right? So if they previously had adopted the tentative subdivision map saying that it was physically suitable for the type of development, and then the council, I'm curious, right, if it's more than just the conditions of approval.
I think it's generally no, but in some oddball scenario where there was some major environmental change that was not known or anticipated at the time that the tentative map went forward, then maybe we would have to look at it. But in a general scenario where everything remained the same from the time the tentative map was approved to when they're presenting the final map, then no.
Good, which is, I suppose, why it's so important for us to consider these now on the tentative map.
Right. And again, when it's presented to you, we should have all those facts and all those things addressed that's presented to you. And of course, a developer can bring something forward that the city does not support for approval, but that would be a waste of everyone's time. So we make sure that everything's presented to you is 100% ready to go and that the staff support it. We cover all our bases at that point.
Thank you.
So after it's approved, whether it's by the city engineer or the city council, it's off to the county recorder. So remember, that's what in record is real. Once it's recorded, it's done. We can't undo it. We have 10 days after we approve it to send it to the county recorder, and they have 10 days to reject it if they want. Typically at that point, a rejection is maybe like a smudge or somebody's numbers off. It's a minor thing that they reject it, and then we come back and correct that and send it back in. Any changes to the final map are going to be a certificate of correction. These are going to be minor changes. If we have to add a street name, something, a legal description is off, or there's an error in a length or distance, and that's it. Rather than those minor corrections that may occur once the final map is recorded or parcel map is recorded, it does not change. Have any further questions?
I've got one. Can I get a copy of this presentation?
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and move on to new business. Item number 2 this evening is PN 19-389, Folsom Plan Area, Parcel 85A, tentative parcel map, and determination that the project is exempt from CEQA.
Good evening, Chair Rathel, Commissioners. You'll probably never guess what type of project you have coming before you next. Thanks to Dan for an excellent presentation. The project before you this evening is a request for approval of a tentative parcel map for a property known as Folsom Plan Area Parcel 85A. The project is located on the east side of East Bidwell Street, as shown in the vicinity map before you, north of Alder Creek Parkway, west of future Westwood Drive, and south of US Highway 50. A little bit of background leading up to this point in time. The City Council approved a specific plan amendment, a general plan amendment, as well as a development agreement for what is known as the Westland Eagle project back in 2015. And that essentially redistributed, created more residential lands within the Folsom Plan area and reduced the amounts of commercial property. In 2016, the City Council approved a tentative parcel map, as well as a tentative subdivision map and a planned development permit for the enclave at Folsom Ranch subdivision. As part of that project, a parcel map was approved that created the subject parcel that we're looking at this evening. And more recently, in 2018, a parcel map creating the 4 parcels, which includes the subject parcel this evening, was recorded with the County of Sacramento. As I referenced, the applicant is seeking approval of a tentative parcel map to subdivide a 54-acre parcel into 4 individual parcels for future sale and development. I would note that no development is proposed this evening with this project. It's simply a parcel map to subdivide the 54-acre property. I've listed the parcel sizes on the screen, the largest being 27 acres in size, with the smallest being almost 4 acres in size. In addition, on the map in front of you, the applicant is proposing to dedicate a little over 7 acres of land for future public right-of-way, for future roadways and associated improvements within this area. This is the parcel map that was submitted by the applicant this evening, with parcel 1 on the left side here, the 27-acre parcel, parcel 2 above that, parcel 3, and parcel 4. As I referenced, the applicant is looking to dedicate right-of-way, a little over 7 acres of right-of-way for future roadways. And you'll see they're showing 2 future roadways, Road A, which is a north-south roadway, the next Placerville Road to Alder Creek Parkway, and then a little shorter stub roadway, Street B, which connects Street A to future Westwood Drive. In looking at the tentative parcel map, there are existing development standards established for this specific plan designation, as well as a general plan designation. It has a general commercial designation. Since no development is being proposed this evening, the only applicable standard is minimum lot size. And the minimum lot size for the GC properties is 0.25 acres. And all of the properties are well above the 0.25 acre minimum threshold. Staff did look at project access as shown on the map. And we believe the location and the orientation of the proposed right-of-way is appropriate for future roadways at these locations. There are specific standards established within the Folsom Plan area specific plan in terms of the design of these roadways. And you can almost see these street sections to the right here, but we have confirmed that the roadways will conform to those street sections as required in the Folsom Plan area specific plan. In addition to the right-of-way, the applicant is proposing to dedicate utility easements as well as landscape easements along the future roadways, as well as along the existing roadways, East Bidwell Street, Alder Creek Parkway, and future Westwood Drive. This planning staff, as well as the engineering staff, reviewed the parcel map and determined it met all the requirements of the Subdivision Map Act, which Dan Wolf just described to you in good detail. And with that, staff does recommend approval of the parcel map as proposed. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And our engineering staff is also here if you have any questions for them.
I have a question, Steve. So you mentioned the size of the lots are 0.25. How many square feet is that? Do you have a-
The minimum required lot size is 0.25 acres.
Do you have a,
So,
like, I live on 13,500
so
square
an
feet
acre is
lot.
43,560 square feet, so 10,000, a little over 10,000 square feet would be a quarter acre.
So these lots are a quarter acre?
No, the minimum requirement to subdivide the land, the minimum parcel size is 0.25 acres. The proposed parcels are 4 acres up to 27 acres in size. So they're substantially above the 0.25 acre minimum size.
So they're pretty big lots.
They're the commercial lots, so they are fairly large in size, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so trying to apply what we learned from the previous item, physical suitability for type of development and density of development. If, this early in the stage of the process, we, I guess, anticipate it would be commercial. The lot sizes are large. It's, the grade is not too...
Fairly flat.
Yeah. How else, though, without, more of an understanding of the nature of the development, like density and type, how do we make that finding?
Well, so starting from a planning perspective, what we're looking at is the development standards, and there was only one requirement, and that's minimum lot size. From an engineering perspective, they're looking at the right-of-way, they're looking at the easements and things like that, and I don't know if there's any other technical information Dan and Steve would review as part of this, but that's from a planning perspective, we're simply looking at the road locations, size of the property. Will these properties be large enough to accommodate development with commercial development? And we have determined that, yes, that is the case. But technically, from a map perspective, I don't know if Dan has anything else to add.
I mean, I guess the
in terms
density
of our
is,
evaluation.
really, it's large, right? These are large parcels. It's not very dense at all, right? Is that how the analysis goes, or?
Well, we don't have a project in front of us this evening. Once the projects come through, we'll do further analysis in terms of density, allowable density. We'll do a traffic study for projects to come through in the future to make sure they function properly. But at this point in time, the properties are relatively flat in size. There's no natural resources. They're suitable size for development.
Got it. Thank you.
It's hard to make a decision when you don't know what's going to be there, because parking is an issue throughout the city. So if you have a big space, but then what's going to go there and how much parking do they need? You know what I'm saying?
Well, once we receive a specific development proposal, perhaps the applicant can touch on this when they come and speak to you. We'll evaluate the size of the building, the parking requirements from the specific plan, and do a further analysis.
And that's later.
That'll be later when they come in for whatever entitlements may be required. It might be a planned development permit, most likely. And that evaluation would occur then.
Thanks, Steve.
What's the zoning on this parcel?
General commercial, GC.
General commercial. So from that, we can extrapolate types of projects that are appropriate there.
There's a list of permitted uses and conditionally permitted uses within a zoning table, yes.
And every parcel will maintain the general commercial zoning, correct?
They'll maintain their same general plan designation and their same specific plan designation, yes.
Okay. I liked Commissioner Duell's insight that some consideration forward is difficult with just a simple subdivision. And I think that's all I could offer to that piece.
I have a question about, a couple of questions. Why were these individual pieces divided up into the lot sizes that they are divided up into? Like, what's the anticipated use? Because, kind of what I have in mind is what's happened at East Bidwell and Blue Ravine with the Target, and then, smaller blocks within that block, and then right across, the ingress and egress for driving in and out of there is difficult, and then there's a lot of little chopped up strip malls that have difficulty surviving. So I would like to know what can possibly be done to make this a better project than what's gone on already, because when there's not sort of a general overall plan or some idea in mind, it seems premature to chop it up.
It's a good question, and perhaps the applicant can shed some light on why the parcels are the sizes they are and the shapes they are and what they anticipate happening.
And so I guess there's nobody, or I guess the applicant can answer that question. So there's nobody really interested in developing any one of these particular parcels?
I would punt that question to the developer because
Okay.
they may have an answer for you.
It looks to me like the corner of parcel 2 has a booster pump site. Is that correct? Is that currently there or planned?
Steve?
Yes, it's currently planned, it's not planned, it's in place, it's complete, it's in use, and the city owns the property and owns and maintains the facility, and has since last February.
And is it the case that a booster pump site is for the movement of wastewater towards treatment facilities? No?
No, this is domestic water. What that pump station does is it takes, we have a temporary water line connection in Iron Point. Comes up the railroad tracks under the freeway into this booster pump station. It's Zone 4 and Zone 5. So what it does is takes water from Zone 3, boosts it up to the Zone 5 tank at the top of the hill, and then gravity flows down to serve Zone 5, 4, and 3 by gravity. And so those booster pumps pump the water up to that tank.
Gotcha, and it looks like there'll be a wall around that. I see a dotted line. Is that a wall that?
It's an existing masonry wall.
Okay, so,
Yes.
and then the parcel 2 looks like it's split to be the smallest. So if nothing else, we can say that parcel 2 will have to accommodate that brick wall and the booster pump station behind it. So
Absolutely.
maybe that could paint a small picture for Commissioner Leary there.
All right, I'll get into access, because I think that's probably the only thing we really are discussing tonight, and the only thing we really struggle with sometimes on parcel maps or subdivision maps, considering we don't know what the project is. Can you talk a little bit more about the plan for this intersection here? We'll just kind of go through the intersections and maybe talk about what's the plan for those.
Well, that'll have to be evaluated when the specific development proposals come in. These are new right-of-ways, for new roadways.
So if we need to put a traffic signal in that location, is that far enough from that location in order to do so?
Yeah, we did evaluate that, and there is sufficient distance between those intersections if required.
Okay, and then these are commercial developments this is the residential here and the enclave, which is a higher density. Is there a plan to have pedestrian access across both here and here?
Steve, do you have any thoughts on?
Well, there would be pedestrian access at both of those locations. However, on Alder Creek Parkway, we're not contemplating a traffic signal, so we would not be placing a crosswalk at that intersection. What people wanted to get across the road, they'd have to go down to Alder Creek Parkway and East Bidwell, cross at the intersection, which is signalized. I believe Westwood may be signalized in the future, so they'd have those two options to get across Alder Creek Parkway to get to those commercial sites.
And this Alder Creek intersection wouldn't be signalized because of the volume of traffic, is that why?
It's correct, and probably the proximity to existing signals. The distance isn't far enough. So we could potentially be looking at turning restrictions at that intersection. Like, for example, not allowing lefts out in the future, only lefts in.
And it's too close to, it seems a pretty good distance from, it's too close to this intersection, is that?
It's not currently contemplated. It may be far enough, but I don't think there's any plan right now to have any signalized. However, depending on the use that goes into that facility, we would take a look at it at that time. And this project, project itself may require a traffic signal to be located at that intersection. But we don't know at this point because we don't know the uses.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just would like to definitely have that pedestrian access going into a commercial center. So I think it's something we definitely need to look at pretty hard when we get a better idea of what's going to go in.
I
Other
agree with
questions for
that, and
staff?
I'll say that if the plan area specific plan actually specifies that all projects in the plan area have to prefer the movement of people over the movement of cars, so not only is that a good, I think, community access look at the site, but it's actually required by the plan area specific plan.
And I did love seeing that in the enclave, the connection that was there directly west to that commercial center. So I thought it's a great example of what we can do. So let's keep that up if we can. Other questions for staff this evening?
I just want to make a comment. Years ago, we looked at the Target shopping center area with all those businesses, and then they backed up to all those 50s, 60s homes on, I don't remember the street.
School
but-
Street?
Yeah. And so this is getting away from annoying these residents because there's a street there as opposed to an alley where they can back off, unload their products at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, so I think we need to keep that in mind for the south side and that doesn't happen again. Yeah.
Any other questions this evening? Thank you, Steve.
But before I leave, I was remiss, there's a green sheet that you received this evening, and it's clarifying the timing mechanism for this entitlement, and the language previously read failure to obtain relevant building or other permits. There are no building permits with this application, so we're changing that language to failure to record a final parcel map within this time period without subsequent extension of the approval shall result in the termination of this approval. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that clarification.
I was wondering how that was going to work, so thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Rathel and Commissioners. I came before you a while back when we had the Enclave project. It's good to see you again tonight. Love all your questions. So I'm Tim Kim, TK Consulting, and work closely with Eagle Commercial and have been working on this project for about 14 years. So I really love the tone of your questions because your questions are all development oriented. Hey, we want to see a project. Tell us more about the project. And I want to see that too. Tonight, this is more simple. There is no development project before you. We're simply dividing up this larger parcel into 4 large but not as large parcels to anticipate development. And these kind of developments are really market driven, meaning that we do a lot of planning up front, try and anticipate different kinds of uses that make the most sense, which has been done all through the specific plan process and beyond that. And but we still don't know until we have someone in and they close on the land and we're putting actual development proposals in front of you. But we have, I think, done a pretty good job at laying out where the streets might go and the right of way and access points and that sort of thing. In the future, we will bring development proposals in front of you, and we can look at all those questions that you asked. So we've got the one large parcel. So in that one, we anticipate maybe a larger commercial, more regional use. And then on the smaller parcels could be hotel. We can even do multifamily under this zone as well. And these parcels are all required to have a certain amount of multifamily, both medium and high density. So this parcel and the 100 acres to the west and that kind of thing. So there's a mix of uses that we have to provide across all of our commercial parcels.
I'm sorry to clarify there. Did you say each of the parcels here, 1, 2, 3, 4, all require a residential element?
No. all of our land in general has a mix of different uses that have to be spread across all basically 300 acres that we own in this project. So we, kind of mix and match and try and spread out different uses among different parcels. So
thank you.
this gives us with 4 parcels the ability to have different kinds of commercial and even multifamily uses. But right now, what's before you is not any kind of development. You're not giving us any rights to actually build or develop anything, just to subdivide this or create this tentative parcel map. So I ask that you would approve it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Questions?
The only thing that jumped at me when I was reading the materials is what odd-shaped lots they are, when it's 3.97 or whatever. I mean, is that based on topography when it gets down to the fractions of a full acre?
Right.
Okay, it is topography. Huh?
Exactly. The topography is always a big issue, drainage, and there's quite a few factors. We start roads that you can see this one's center and it's lined up with enclave, so that's where that starts. But then, we try and make it so that we can minimize the grading in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Balance the site.
Thanks.
So can you give us some examples of what would fit on each one of these lots in your
Sure.
best estimation?
Yeah, I mean, there's such a wide range, but what we're looking at, what we're hoping for is more of a medical use on the large parcel in there. And medical can be a medical office, it could be a hospital, and then other kind of supportive uses. We are hoping to attract a hotel user up at that top parcel, parcel 2. Parcel 3 and 4 could be, we need to put a fair amount of multifamily, it's a requirement. So one or both of those may be multifamily, and which would also provide a nice transition from commercial to multifamily to single family across Westwood.
So you're not really envisioning strip malls or?
I would never use the term strip mall, but
We have lots of them.
we don't do that anymore. No, these, and to give credit to your staff, they would never approve the traditional, strip mall in that sense. So we, if you recall, had done the shops project, which we brought before you too, on the southeast corner there. And if you recall, it was a very nice layout and very nice architecture. And so any commercial buildings will be held to a high standard. We actually are working on architectural guidelines and standards for all of our commercial, that any project that comes forward would meet not only the guidelines in the specific plan, but kind of a qualitative architectural guideline of our own, so that we make sure we maintain a high quality throughout all of our commercial properties.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm piggybacking on Barbara's question, wouldn't a grocery store be something that's important in this area?
Love the way you're thinking. So we have all 4 corners here of East Bidwell and Alder Creek, and grocery stores work great on your way home. And so we anticipate people coming off the freeway, coming south on East Bidwell. So the southwest corner of Alder Creek and East Bidwell is our neighborhood shopping center site.
Mm-hmm.
So we anticipate that to have our grocer.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant this evening? Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Thank you.
All right, now's the time where we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's any member of the audience that would like to address the commission this evening on this agenda item, if you'll please step forward. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And we'll move on to discussion. Or a motion.
I'll move to approve the Folsom Plan Area Parcel 85A tentative parcel map application, PN 19389, to subdivide an existing 54.30 acre property located at the northeast corner of the intersection of East Bidwell Street and Alder Creek Parkway into 4 new individual parcels for future sale and development, subject to findings A through I and conditions of approval 1 through 9 attached to this report with modification to condition number 2 to read, the project approval granted under this staff report shall remain in effect for 2 years from final date of approval, December 4th, 2021. Failure to record a final parcel map within this time period without the subsequent extension of this approval shall result in the termination of this approval.
Second.
Kelly, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Mallory,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Duell,
Yes.
Commissioner Leary,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Rathel.
Yes. Congratulations. All right, that concludes our agenda items for this evening. We'll go ahead and move on to the planning manager report.
Yeah, just wanted to reconfirm that we will have a meeting on December 18th. We've got a fairly large subdivision that'll be before you that evening. We're working hard to try to get that packet out early to you. Our target is to have it out this Friday to give you folks a few more days to review it. If there's anybody that may not be there, please let us know just so we can be prepared.
Thank you.
Would that be on the south side?
Yes.
Okay.
Do the doors here lock on a timer?
I believe they do. I think they lock and unlock at 5 o'clock, and then again, they might have done the same thing at 6:30, but we had the override on, but for some reason they're locked, so I apologize for that. It's
Can we
happened a
look
few
at that?
times.
It's a little
Yeah.
disheartening to think that maybe a member of the public would come in and jiggle that handle and find the door to be locked.
Yeah, I sent an email to the city manager and to the facilities manager to find out what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question again. I've asked it probably 3 times now. Is this dais where we are right now bulletproof?
What?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of shooting around. So I want to know if somebody comes in with a gun, is a safe place to go under here? Is this bulletproof? I just want to know that.
I don't know the answer. I can try to check with our police department and see if they know. But
Okay.
Steve, you don't happen to know, do
I mean,
you?
I just want to plan. If anything happens, I want to know, do I go that way or do I go under here? You guys are, sorry, you guys are kind of screwed.
At least
But-
you guys will see it coming.
I mean, you know, it's just like daily there's shootings in places and I just think like that. I want to plan. So if somebody can get back to me on that, thanks.
Anyone have any more cheery comments? We don't really want to end the meeting with that.
Being proactive.
All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:30.
And Merry Christmas.